Hi divers, Alec Peirce again from Scuba 2000 with another episode of Vintage Scuba. Some of the neat stuff that I have in my Vintage Scuba collection that might be of interest to you, give you an idea of how the items that you use, the gear you've used in scuba diving, where it came from, how it's changed, how it's developed, and some funny stuff and some weird stuff as well. I hope you're finding some of these interesting. Today we want to talk about fins. Now, fins may seem to be kind of a boring subject. I'll see if I can't liven it up a little bit because I have a lot of weird fins and some interesting stories too about fins. So let me share a little bit about fins, where they've come from. Now, most of you, if you're already a diver, know what a fin is. A fin goes in your foot. And you go into a dive store, you see all kinds of fancy fins. This is a typical example. This is Sherwood's excellent fin. I think it's called the Elite. One of the best fins on the market. Super lightweight, so it's easy to travel with, easy on your foot. High performance, the central channel to channel water, all the neat stuff. It also has the very latest and the stretchy straps. Stretchy straps are great. Most of the dive fins that you've used and still aren't available have a rather complicated strap that goes through a clip and you can adjust it and so on. But if you got the right size stretch strap, now keep this in mind. Somebody mentioned the other day that they have a pair of these stretch straps and they're too tight. I'll go back and change the size of the stretch strap. You can do that. There's different sizes. So anyway, these are fantastic. You put your foot in, you pull this up over the heel, and bam, off you go. It doesn't change. You don't have to yank it tight. You can't lose the clip. The strap doesn't wear out and so on. So this is a pretty typical example of a modern fin. Here's another one. This is a very new, very sophisticated fin from Scuba Pro. It's called the Nova. And it's a very, very nice fin. I've used this one. Very, very efficient. Not cheap, but very, very efficient fin. It seems that every time I kick with this, I get more power from this fin than I ever have before. Special features like it collapses if you kick too hard, and again the stretch strap, beautiful fin. This is a typical fin that you see in a dive store today, but they weren't like this when diving started. Now let me take you back a few years. In fact, let me take you back about 50 years, okay? Back to the 50s, as a matter of fact, and to show you a couple of fins from back then, you might get a kick out of this. There was a gentleman by the name of Owen Churchill. Owen Churchill, and he made products. He made some of the very earliest diving. He made other stuff too. He made a fantastic mask that was very, very old. But anyway, this is an Owen Churchill fin, and you can see it's pretty interesting. This particular one has an adjustable strap. You see how the strap goes through and there's a buckle and you can change the length of the strap. Small pocket. This is in fact a size small, and yep, and it fits onto your foot. And you'll notice that the fins a little bit like whale or shark fins. You see, they're different, and they're actually marked left top, right top. So this was on your right foot, this was on your left foot. It looks like this. It would look weird if you're finning like this, you see. So these were actually left and right footed, and they were top or bottom as well. They had to be in the right top or bottom. So the Owen Churchill fin, which also came in a fixed strap, more common actually. This fin was actually used by Mike Nelson in a lot of his sea hunt episodes. I don't know if you're watching my sea hunt playlist, but you should. It's kind of interesting. But these fins were used by him, and these were very, very popular at the time. Largely because they were but the only decent fin around. And eventually Owen Churchill sold his fin to a company called Voit. Very, very big company in the 50s and 60s, are gone now. Very big company, and these were marketed as, still marketed as a Churchill fin. His name became quite famous. So that's a pretty typical fin from the 50s. It looks a little bit weird, but it's pretty typical. There are other ones just as weird. Here's another pair of fins. These were called the Webbys. Webbys fin, and these also came with a left and right, so they had to put on your foot just right, and a strap around the back. They didn't have all the fancy straps and connections we have now. It was very common back then, even for scuba divers or lung divers, as we were called back then. No scuba, the word scuba had not been invented, to wear a fin like this. Very common to wear a full foot fin. Sometimes over a bare foot, sometimes over a little neoprene sock for a bit of warmth. But this was a common pair of fins. Let me show you another pair of fins that are kind of neat. These fins were marketed by a company called Healthways. And believe it or not, although this one is very small, these were actually a full-size fin. You can actually get these fins for a full-size man. The sport of scuba diving, by the way, in the early days was largely aimed at young people. Okay, today I own a big dive store in Ontario, Today, our market is older people, very largely older people with time and money. They go scuba diving. But anyway, back then it was the young people, so these fins may look very small, and they were quite small. So this was called the Web Feet fin by Healthways. It looks very, very simple. It looks like a kid's fin. Well, it was. And this fin came in pure gum rubber, as it says. You can see it's brown. And this is a box that the Web Feet came in. Let me just show you the box. It's pretty neat. You can also see that these fins came in different colors as well. Well, they came in black and gum rubber brown, and they came in green. So different colors, that's what you got. Not the bright colors we have now, pink and orange and yellow and blue, none of that. Black was most common, blue a little bit, and green as well was pretty common. So that was what was very common. When you went into your dive store to buy a pair of fins, that's what you got. Now later, as the sport took on, became more popular, fins began to change a little bit, not a great deal. The first pair of fins I ever owned were similar in style to the ones we've looked at. This was a famous fin. I know you look at it and say, what is that? Well, this, folks, was a famous fin. This is the famous duck foot, if you look at one of them, but they were called duck feet. You can see the word duck feet right on there. And these fins were very, very common. They were relatively inexpensive. You'd probably buy a pair of these for about 10 bucks, which was cheap. Even in those days, pretty cheap. Fins could be $15 to $20. It may not sound like much today, a $5 or $10 difference, but it was a big deal back then. If you can get a fin for $10 and a better fin for $11, you're really agonized over that dollar. Things have changed, huh? But these were less than $10. I paid $9.95 for my first pair of duck feet from Honest Archies in Jamaica, New York. That's in Queens. If some of you folks in the Eastern Seaboard may remember, Honest Archies and Central Skin Divers are still around, actually, and that's 60 years ago almost. Anyway, so this was a famous fin, the duckfoot. Now, it was famous for several reasons. One of the reasons was that this was used by the military. Yes, that's right. The Marines, the U.S. Navy used this particular fin. As a matter of fact, these were marketed sometimes as being a UDT fin. As a matter of fact, I believe if we look closely on here, you will see on here the giant UDT model. Giant UDT model. I don't know if you can see that or not, Kevin, but see it on there? Giant UDT model. I don't know if they're giants, but it is a UDT model. And then even more so, to make it even more compelling, a little more, what's the word, professional. On the side it's stamped training. Now I don't know what the difference is between the training giant UDT model and the giant UDT model. Probably just this is not on the real one. But it was pretty slick. So people like, oh yeah, I use duck feet. I'm a professional diver. I use duck feet. It was pretty neat back in those days. So they're heavy. They're thick gum rubber strap on there, not adjustable. Your foot had to fit. They came in 3 sizes, too small, too big, and close. So you tried to get the ones that were close, and they worked pretty well. Sometimes it worked with your bare foot, sometimes a little sock. And they had to be, it's marked on here, top as well, because the bottom and the top are a little bit different, you see? So you had to wear them on, put them on properly too. So that was very common. Another very common fin in those days was this fin. This is a Voit Viking, and you would probably, if you saw this fin in the dive store, you said, well, that's a snorkeling fin. That's not for scuba divers. That's a snorkeling fin. Well, maybe today, this is what we call a full foot or a snorkeling fin. But again, in the 50s and 60s, this was used by scuba divers. It still is used. We still use this fin as scuba divers when we do our vintage events. When we go to Silver Springs or Ohio or other places where we have vintage events, where all the divers show up. A lot of my friends and other people from all over North America and outside of the country as well show up to take part in a vintage event. Everything has to be older than 1975. You can't wear anything newer than 1975. It's fantastic. And many of the divers use this fin. It often goes on a barefoot, as I've mentioned, or sometimes they wear a little thin neoprene sock inside the fin. This was very, very common. Again, Mike Nelson in Seahund used these fins, 58 to 62. 1958 to 62, he used these fins as well. So they were very common. And there were lots of those types of fins around. I'll just show you some quick ones here. This is from Scuba Bro, that big professional company. Here's their, what we would call today, cheap little rubber snorkeler fin. Wow, this was actually a scuba fin. There are lots of them out there. This is a kind of a neat one. This is called the Skin Diver fin, marketed by that company Voit that I mentioned. Great company, long gone, called Skin Diver. It has Skin Diver right on there. And here's another one. This is by... This is called the frog feet. Maybe they're trying to take a little bit of promotional material away from the duck foot. And another one of the skin divers. Same fin as this. They're the very same fin. You can see they're identical. Well, except for the color. Back then, they would try to mix colors and give you something interesting. That was available in the duck feed as well. You could get different color mixes. They weren't very popular, but it was just an attempt by the manufacturers to make it a little more interesting. So that was very typically the kind of fin we used in the very early days in the 50s and 60s. Now, as the market got bigger and the companies realized, why, we can sell, we have good fins, we can sell them, then the fins started to change. And it wasn't very long after that, I don't know exactly, I'm going to guess the mid to late 60s, that the first real decent scuba fin came out. And it was famous. It actually was more famous than the original duck feet. This is the fin that was marketed by U.S. divers, Aqualung, and called the rocket fin. Now, the rocket fin dominated the market for many, many years. I'm going to guess from about 1970 till about 2000. This was the fin. If you were a scuba diver and you said, oh, I use rocket fins, I said, oh yeah, good, rocket fins are great. And there were. There was a real improvement in the fin overall. It had a decent pocket on it, an adjustable strap. Well, these little metal clips that were so common in the old days were not much fun to work with, particularly if you're wet and cold, but they did work. Adjustable fin, the U.S. divers rocket fin, quite famous. They had these 3 vents in them, 3 holes in the fin, and these were touted as making them more efficient. Apparently, when on your power downstroke, the water did not go through the holes. I'm not sure how they arranged that. The water went straight back and gave you a lot of power. On the upstroke, then the water would go through the vents and you could upstroke easily. That's not your power stroke. And I'm not sure how they did that. I think they spent a lot of money promoting the vents on the rocket fin, and there really wasn't much actual technical truth to them being beneficial, but a lot of fins had those. A short while after this fin came out, then Scuba Pro, big company, came out with a similar fin. They called theirs a jet fin. Now, these 2 fins actually, believe it or not, are still available today. They say they came out in the 60s. So now here we are 40 years later. They still buy this fin. And a lot of divers do like them. One reason why divers like them is, first of all, they're cheap. They're relatively cheap compared to modern fins. Modern fins might cost you $150, maybe more. You can buy these for under $100. But today, the price is relative, and not that people waste money necessarily, but to pay $100, $150 for a pair of fins is not a big deal anymore. But a lot of divers like them because they're heavy. This fin weighs 3 pounds. So 2 of these fins weigh 6 pounds, 5, 6, 7 pounds. And so some divers like them. They claim, and they say that it keeps their feet down, they don't have to wear as many weights on their weight belt and so on. And if they feel that's the case, that's the case. There's no way that these are as efficient as a modern fin. And they say, well, in the water it doesn't matter because in the water they're neutral. That may well be true, but you see, every time you kick, you have to stop it. Then you have to restart it. You have to stop it and restart it. So if it's a big, heavy, clunky fin like this, that takes effort. However, in some cases, these might be the best choice for fins, and they are still available. The rocket fin, quite famous. Here's an interesting fin. I'm going to show you a couple of funny ones now, just to begin to wrap up. Here's a funny fin. This was called the Caravelle. This was made by U.S. divers, marketed, and you see this is a full-foot fin. I don't think they made this in a strap fin. I'm pretty sure they did not. But it was a kind of a neat fin, and what they did with this fin as they tried an attempt to make it more convenient. So with this particular fin, it had a nice, comfortable rubber foot pocket, and it had a hard plastic blade. With this fin, you could take the blade off. You see? So these are your boots. You put these boots on up on the shore, and you walk down to the shoreline, and you sit down with your buddies, and you do all your scuba gear together, and before you jump in the water, where today you put your fin on, with these fins, you put the blade on. Put the blade on like that, and you jump in the water, and off you go. I never owned a pair of these. I don't know. They were probably more expensive, so that's why I didn't own them. But it was a neat idea. Detachable blade. Just kind of weird. Well, you want to weird. You want to see weird? Okay. You ready? What the heck is this? There was a company called Farallon. Farallon, just exactly the way it sounds. Farallon. I think it has 2 L's in it. And if you've been around for a while, you may recognize the name Farallon because Farallon became quite famous. First of all, they did have a full line of equipment: mask, snorkels, fins, and boots, and other stuff. They had a computer, they had dive lights. I think they had knives, but they also made another interesting line of equipment. There were DPVs, diver propulsion vehicles, or underwater tows, we used to call them. Those battery-powered devices that you would hang on to, and you turn the switch and it would pull you through the water. They're great. We still have them today. Not Farallon, they're long gone. But Farallon made a full line of those, about 4 or 5 different sizes, and they were very, very good. All forged aluminum, good motors. You use automotive style batteries, and they were very, very popular. Used a great deal by the military and by divers as well. I've had several over the years in the past, and they're still around. They're vintage, but they're still around. They're that good. They were that good. So Farallon became well known, world known for their Farallon. They're a diver propulsion vehicle. So now today, if you say, oh yes, you've heard of Farallon? Oh yes, I used to have a Farallon. So the word Farallon, the company name, is now means that special bright orange, by the way, torpedo-shaped diver propulsion vehicle. But Farallon made a whole line of products. They had some masts and snorkels and fins, and they were all really, really interesting. Probably among the other equipment, aside from their DPVs, their most interesting, odd piece of equipment was the Farallon. This is it right here. This is the Farallon. And the Farallon came in 2 styles. This one you can see. The other style, the simpler style, didn't have this rig up here. It just had a spring strap. Just like the spring straps you get today. When you go into a dive store today, you see a lot of the fins, or some of the fins, have a stainless steel spring around the heel. Not an adjustable strap, and not one of the newer bungee style straps, but a spring, an actual spring, a spring strap. Well, Farallon had a Farallon, and they had a spring strap. And we're talking the 70s here, folks. So, you know, when people say, oh, look at the spring straps on those fins, that's a great idea. No, no, no. It's an old idea. It's coming out again. But Farallon was one of the first. So they had this spring fin, which is pretty neat. And then a year or two later, they came out with this. What? It's a great fin. Heavy. Boy, oh boy. This is a heavy fin. You know, this fin got away, it must weigh about 7 or 8 pounds, so 2 of these is 20 pounds. You don't need a weight belt, right? Well, you did. But anyway, it's a really, really well-made fin. And you can see what's odd about it is it has 2 stainless steel rods that go on each side. And then attached to that rod is this device that goes up behind your thigh. So you put your leg in like so, in the foot pocket, then you do up the Velcro. There you go. Nice and tightly, and off you go. Well, you think this doesn't give you a lot of power. You're darn right it does. And it actually is easier on your foot because the strain of keeping the fin, pushing the fin down, is now shared by your leg. That was the theory anyway. And it actually did work pretty well. It did work pretty well. They're even adjustable. I don't know if you can see here, Kevin, but there are little adjustable knobs on here, and you can adjust it for different legs. So, Kevin, you're a little bit bigger than me, 3 times. And, sorry. So you would adjust this for number 10. Because when you kick with this fin, you know, it makes a wake. Go water skiing behind Kevin. And me, I'd probably have a 5 on. So you can actually adjust this for your leg. A weird, weird fin. And something else is weird about it. I always thought this was a great idea. The grommet. What a great idea. Because you've got a pair of fins like this here. So how you store them? Well, you put a nail in the garage and you stick it on the wall. That's what a great idea. That came from the factory. That was from the factory. So there's a really odd fin, the Farallon. So anyway, fins today, very efficient, last forever. Literally, here at Scuba 2000, we give a lifetime guarantee on fins, even against breakage. Anyway, we just give you a new pair of fins. So indestructible, lightweight, highly efficient, colorful, and, you know, reasonably affordable as well. But they didn't start like that. There's been a lot of development over the years. They've changed a whole lot from this little thing, little rubber, gum rubber, going through the famous UDT training fin, my first pair of fins. I was a frogman. Famous rocket fin, and of course the weird Farallon, all the way up to the modern fin. Been a lot of fun over the years trying different fins and seeing how they've changed over the years. I've been really fortunate. I've tried all these fins over the years as different ones came out. I've tried them all. Some are great, some are kind of weird, but they've all worked. But the modern fins are fantastic. Anyway, there's a bit more history. Vintage Scuba fins, how they started and how they began, how they ended. Hope you enjoyed that. Alec Peirce.